Hi, guys. Welcome to Starsight Tarot. We are here to receive messages from your guides who see us from a very different place. And it is their perspective that sometimes helps us break out of our thought loops. So look at the three piles, see which one calls out to you. Maybe more than one will call out to you. And when you're ready with your selection, head to the readings. Hi, pile 1. The card for the question, who you are, is the Magician. For the question, what is your deepest fear? We have the Three of Swords. The question of what is at stake in this fear, the Six of Pentacles in reverse, and your guidance. Trust the timing. Trust the wave you came in on. Time is not running out. I'm sorry about the noise in my environment. Look at this Magician card. Generally, the Magician is a card of mastery. You have learned to harness all the elements, but in a way that they can move through you. It's not a harnessing as in you rule over them. It's more like the muses flowing through a poet, an artist, where you develop enough emptiness, you develop enough spiritual mastery over the ego that you can let the forces travel through you and take you to your highest destiny, to the most you can do in the moment in terms of what you are here to learn. So you're showing up as the Magician, which tells me that you've put in enormous work in yourself over the past few years, because the journey of the Magician is not overnight. You have to keep working at it. It's the first, well, not exactly the first, because the Fool is the first major arcana card. This is technically the second one, but it says 1. The number associated with the Magician is 1. But paradoxically, it takes a long time to get to this 1. So you've put an enormous work in yourself, and it's sincere work, it's inner work. It's not just goal-oriented work. I want to be successful, so let me do ABC. No, it's more, I want to heal. I want to understand myself. I want to do whatever I can to take responsibility and accountability for my suffering, for my desires, for my actions, for my capacity to be a person in this world. And now you are here. Look at the card. You are at the edge. The sun is shining. You are in front of the sky and the ocean, the horizon. You're at the edge of the shore and you're ready to cast your spell. Everything is in place. You've done everything and you can see it. You can see that you are right at the point where you can now simply go for whatever it is that you want. But you're hesitating. You're at the edge. You've reached this point just before completion. And understand that completion is not like a one-time event. Just as even if you worked for a long time towards a degree, the graduation is not, it doesn't mean it's over. It means like you've reached a particular end stage, after which there are going to be more stages. But this is a very significant end stage. And so you've reached there and you're ready. You're about to get things into motion, and here you are hesitating. Because your deepest fear has now emerged, and this fear is failure. This fear is that of sorrow, of heartbreak. It's a very full heart. Look at the image. It's a very full heart. It's full of love and roses and blood, blood, where you're connected to the earth, where you're connected to the reality of yourself as a body, as matter. You feel both vulnerable and grounded. And it is here that the swords pierce your heart. The thing to understand about your fear, well, one of the things to understand about your fear is that it comes from a very good place. The fact that you're afraid means that you're very grounded. That in spite of the fact that you've reached this point of being the magician, there's no pride here. And this is a very, very hard thing to have achieved. You've achieved humility. You have earned this fear. The fear itself is an achievement because it means that you are in touch with yourself as a person, as a human being, even though you are inhabiting the archetype of the magician at the moment. So the first thing is be proud of the fact that you're afraid of failure. Draw strength from it. What is at stake here is a fear of I want to say being taken advantage of, but it's deeper than that. It's more like you're afraid of imbalance. That you put in all of this work, that you do everything you can, and the returns can never measure up to what you've put in. It's not a simple question of exchange that you want to be paid well. I personally, I think this is about a fear of professional failure, but apply it to whatever part of your life that this entire story is resonating most with. So there is a fear here of failure, and the failure is not just, okay, it won't work, whatever it is that you're doing. It's more failure in the sense of imbalance, that the returns will never measure up to what you put in, that you won't be seen in your full capacity, that your heart won't be seen, that in some ways you will be experienced by others as someone who's doing this for the money, and you are, for the returns, and you are. But it's much deeper than that for you. Whatever it is that you're now ready to complete or claim or put into motion, your whole self, your vision for what life is, your entire heart is invested in this. And you're afraid that the world around you or the people who are going to be at the receiving end of your services are never going to be able to mirror that depth back to you. That something about it will always feel incomplete. You're afraid of dissatisfaction. It's that kind of failure that you're afraid of. Not failure in the sense of people won't like me, people will reject me, but more in the sense of I am never going to be known in my fullness by the people who will receive my services. Even if you are paid an exorbitant amount of money, there is a very particular kind of recognition that you seek, and that recognition could have felt out of reach all your life. And part of the work that you've been doing for the last few years on yourself is to give that recognition to yourself, to unearth that awareness within yourself. But now that you've done it, it feels really lonely. You're alone. knowing who you are, and you want that awareness and that knowing to be reflected back to you at the level of your work. And this could feel inside of you like it's a very tough ask, that most people in your environment, or most people who are likely to receive your services, they're lost in their own worlds, they're on their own timelines, and you can't imagine how can they ever see you the way you want to be seen. You can't even imagine it. And part of the dread here is, again, your realism. You are serving all the data that you've amassed through your life, how people have seen you, what they've given back to you. It just seems really unlikely that you will get what you want. And I think you'll still do it. As the magician, you're still going to move forward. But this is a moment where you are grieving the loss of this dream, that you'll get what you want. It feels like you have to give this dream up before you move forward. Now your guidance is that actually you don't need to give this dream up. What you need to give up is the dream of timing. So if you think this is going to happen, what you seek from others, the kind of recognition you seek, if you hope that this is going to happen in the next 2 years, next 3 years, next 5 years, you're being asked by your guides to give that up. Give the sense of timing up, but hold on to your dream. It's real. It's going to happen. And part of the function of the dream is also to allow you to go deeper within yourself, to give yourself an even deeper recognition that you're able to give right now. So this dream that you have about getting it from others is also a source of you going deeper inside of yourself and unlocking even sharper and holistic layers of what you can do for yourself while you wait to get it from others. So the dream is not something that you need to worry about. It's the timing that you need to work on releasing, expectations around timing. I want to say this to you again. Be proud of yourself that this is your fear, that you're so honestly in touch with the limits of this existence, that you're so honestly in touch with the depth of what you seek from others. And the fact that you're feeling this fear, it signifies that you've done a lot of good inner work. You're ready for more. But if at this point, before you go for it, before you take the next step, if you need a little bit of rest, if you need a little bit of sitting with yourself and crying with yourself and just marveling at how far you've come, it will help. It will help, pile one. So proud of you. Keep going. There's so much more yet to come. Hi, pile 2. The card for the question who you are is the 7 of Swords with the keyword deception written on it. This is going to be important, which is why I'm mentioning it in case you're not looking at the image on the video file and you're just listening to this. So the card in response to who you are is the 7 of Swords. The card in response to the question, what is your deepest fear, is the Queen of Swords. The card in response to the question, what is at stake for you in this sphere, is the Empress in reverse. And your guidance is the earth pulsing, pulse of the mother, slow down, time in nature. All right, so this message is going to be, it's going to perhaps cause agitation for you. Now, there's some kinds of agitation that are useful. They show us places where we're uncomfortable to face ourselves. Those kinds of agitation, it's useful to sit through them and develop emotional stamina and capacity to sit with them, to sit with that agitation and defensiveness. But sometimes we're not ready yet. We're not ready to face ourselves, and that's okay too. So while listening to this message, if you feel like this is useful and this is helping you understand something of yourself, definitely listen through it, even if it's making you uncomfortable. But if it's making you feel anxious, if it's making you feel like you're not feeling good, then please click off. This message will reach you anyway when you're ready for it. So don't force yourself to sit through something that you're not yet able to use. The important thing is whether you can use this message or not. It's not about whether it's true or false. It's about, did you learn something about yourself from it? Then it's for you. Okay. So the Seven of Swords, and in this deck, which is one of my favorite decks, the Field Tarot, there is a fox or a jackal that's sitting. And this is it's sitting with a sword and it's protecting itself with 6 other swords, thus making it the Seven of Swords. And this being, this fox or jackal being, is a trickstery energy. It is a deceptive energy. And more times than not, it's an energy that's deceiving itself. In fact, other people can see its truth, but the Seven of Swords can't. This card has come up in response to the question, who are you? Who's the person who's listening to this pile? So your first message is, your first piece of guidance is that you're lying to yourself about your deepest fear. In order to cope with your deepest fear, you're lying to yourself. This doesn't mean you're a bad person. This means that the fear has a particular kind of hold on you. And again, it's not because you are ill-equipped to deal with it psychologically. There can be all kinds of reasons why it's feeling too much to handle, or unconsciously you feel like you won't survive an encounter with this fear, and so you're keeping yourself safe. You could have been exposed to this fear early on as a child. When we have childhood wounds attached to our fears, it's really hard to deal with them because they came into our lives, into our psychic awareness at a time when we definitely weren't equipped to deal with them. So then they become this kind of place inside our heads and inside our bodies where we just automatically think we won't be able to handle it, without realizing that that feeling comes from a time in the past. At the unconscious level, there's no passing of time. Everything is as fresh as yesterday, or as fresh as it's going to be tomorrow. So part of why you may not be able to deal with this fear is that it took form, or it became real in some sense when you were a child. The other reason could be that this is a more collective fear that you're feeling. Either this is a family wound, an ancestral thing that you're dealing with now at the level of your individual being. It could be a community thing where your community has been through certain collectively traumatic experiences that are now showing up in your particular incarnation as a wound, that as a fear that it's very hard for you to face because you know what other people have been through. And so your fear is then based in knowledge of history. I'm saying all of this to emphasize that you lying to yourself could be out of very, very real reasons. Not stuff like I'm emotionally lazy, not stuff like I don't have the balls to face this. No. Very real reasons why you've been lying to yourself about your deepest fear. So, what is this deepest fear? It's a fear of being independent. It's a fear of speaking your truth. What I'm getting is that some of your closest relationships, you don't fully respect the people that you're with. You have very trenchant critiques of their actions, of the way they live their life. It's possible that they get, from your point of view, they get into all kinds of pickles all the time. They rely on you to rescue them. Even if they don't rely on you, just hearing them talk about the same thing over and over, you have to work really hard within yourself to not tear them apart. And for that to happen, there's a chance that at some point you start lying to yourself about how you really felt about them. Again, I feel compelled to say that this could be a childhood pattern where you saw adults around you doing really questionable things morally, even if it was like low-key manipulation, but still doing things that made you feel like they did not have moral integrity, and you couldn't question them. Or at least in the culture that I grew up in, if you question your parents, you're very swiftly cut down to size. There isn't a lot of space to have democratic discussions about the conduct of adults and parent figures. So you could have learned very early on to keep these feelings in a vault, critical feelings about others in a vault. But what that could have done was then have you get into relationships where you just really didn't respect the other because somewhere inside of you, you had that certainty, like there's no one I respect. Everyone's like this. I'm not going to find a friend who I fully admire and who is full of integrity. And so this is just something I have to make peace with, which is the limits of human purity. There is no pure being, and so I can't expect that, and so I have to make peace with whatever impurity lands in my environment and in my life. It's not that these relationships could be completely bad, but because this critique or this disrespect is unconscious, it could really sour things quite a bit at your end. And again, then you trying really hard to not say anything. Just it could be creating a lot of mental health stuff for you, where you're just unhappy and you don't know what the source of that unhappiness is. If all of this is resonating for you so far, then the source of your unhappiness is actually your fear of alienating the people that you love. We can still love people though we're angry with them. We can still love people though we think they're not doing right by themselves. And this is a psychological internal conflict that you need to deal with in a more honest way. You can love someone and at the same time you can have a lot of problems with them, and you can decide that you don't want to be around them. Now you're scared of all of these decisive kind of moments. You are scared of conflict. You're scared of actually having to speak your mind, because the bitterness, the anger, it goes so deep that you're really afraid of wounding the other. Because sometimes, these others are doing things that are problematic, but our anger is much deeper because we're seeing all of the things that they could become, all of the things that they could have, but they're not, because they're sabotaging themselves in our eyes. And so our anger is also mixed in with attachment, because we want them to get to the place we think that they need to get to. So it's a very complex terrain here, very complex relational terrain here, where your deepest fear is actually facing your own truth, facing your own feelings about others, specifically about people you're close to, people you are in long-term committed relationships with. What is at stake is, apart from all of these things, what is at stake also is that you're very afraid of loneliness. You think that doing all of this, getting in touch with the truth of your feelings, is going to result in a lifelong alienation. Because again, your internalized belief is that everyone is problematic, that everyone is low-key unethical, and you're never going to find 100% ethical person. Now that belief is so strongly ingrained within you that you're not able to entertain the possibility that, first of all, if you tell your loved ones how you really feel, maybe they will make changes, maybe they will agree with you. But if they don't and you decide to part, you're not able to entertain the possibility that you will actually find people who, even if they're not 100% ethical at the level of what they do, they are 120% ethical at the level of their intention, that they are sincerely trying, that they are very open to healing themselves, they're very open to hearing the critical assessments of the people around them, and they are sincere in their efforts to address some of their shortcomings and address some of their blind spots. You don't need a person who's 100% pure. You need a person who is committed to purifying themselves as a lifelong process, and who is open enough to include their loved ones in the process. That is not an impossibility, but this is the grief you have. This is the grief you're holding, either as an ancestral wound or a childhood wound, or both, or something even more than that, where you are so disappointed with how people have acted in your midst that it's hard to grieve what you think you've lost. In many ways, you feel unconsciously that you've lost them, because as soon as you saw that little moment of ethical dissonance, you were like, I'm done at some level. But at the relational level, at the level of reality, you kept deepening the relationship. But somewhere inside of you, you broke up with them. So this contrast is what you need to properly get in touch with and work with. Because you right now, this fear of facing yourself, the truth of your feelings, is actually resulting in you denying yourself the relationships that you want, the relationships that you can have. It is not impossible to meet people who are open-hearted about their healing, who are interested in it, who are committed to it. Okay? Now your guidance is, this is going to take some time to figure out. If you have been this person for the last 30 years, obviously 15 minutes of a pick a card reading is not going to heal you. So you need to make time for this process. You need to understand that it's going to take you time. Please be kind to yourself. Be gentle with yourself as you go through this. You go through this work of facing the truth of your feelings. Sorry about the noise. Right, I'm back. Sorry about the noise. Yeah, so I was saying that you're going to need to make some time for this process. Isolating yourself right now will help a little bit. I don't mean isolate yourself all day. I mean taking some time away from the people in your environment, especially the people that you have conflictual feelings towards. Taking 20 minutes every day away from everyone is really going to help you get in touch with how you really feel. Because often we're so embroiled in other people's drama and then our drama mixed in with theirs that we are not able to hear the sound of our own voice. And that's what you need. So taking 20 minutes every day, if you can take more, even better, but even starting with 20 minutes every day to do this work is going to help you a lot. All right, the noise is back, and I'm going to take that as an indication that this is all you need for now. All the best, Pile 2. Be kind to yourself. All right, Pile 3. There's a lot of noise in my environment, and I'm sorry about that. So, to the question, who are you? We have the moon. The question, what is your deepest fear? We have the King of Cups. Question, what is at stake in your fear? We have the Five of Wands reversed. And your guidance, stop micromanaging the universe. With you being represented by the moon, I can say that you're very sensitive, very intuitive, very receptive to what others say, what others do. You're likely very empathetic, can understand what other people are feeling very quickly, have a lot of compassion towards them. But also you have a deep need to be alone in your own world. Maybe you're very creative. You like dreaming. It's not a time pass kind of a thing for you. It's really nourishing to you to be able to dream and imagine and think about things that have never happened. But when you do that, you're actually accessing the collective soul. And of course it's very nourishing to you because it's full of goodness and love and beauty. Now what you're afraid of is actually responsibility. Now hear me out. See, you could be taking care of a lot of people in your environment. So it's not that you are not responsible. But a new kind of responsibility or a new kind of invitation has recently appeared in your midst, or is going to come as an opportunity, maybe at work or maybe at home, in your personal sphere, somewhere, where it's not just responsibility in the sense of caregiving. So you could have been a caregiver since a very early age. So it's not that kind of responsibility that you're afraid of. You're afraid to be a leader. You're afraid of the responsibility of managing a bunch of people, not just taking care of them. Because a leader doesn't just take care of people. The leader also takes a collective to a particular destination, towards a particular goal. And part of leadership, part of being a good leader, is knowing when to give care and when to let people figure it out on their own. Part of being a good leader is to sometimes take decisions that would not be readily accepted by the group. Part of being a good leader is to manage conflict, is to be able to say, this is what I think, and I am open to hearing your perspective, and at the same time, I'm confident enough to take the decision that I think I need to take. To be both open and anchored in your own position. So being a leader is much more complex and difficult than being a caregiver. Now you're a fantastic caregiver, but you're afraid to let that progress towards being an empathetic leader, being a good, loving leader. You could be saying to yourself, well, I don't like controlling people. I don't like telling people what to do when they don't want to do it. Because you're such a sensitive person yourself, it is possible that you've had difficult experiences with authority figures who've walked all over you in the name of knowing better, who have not been kind to you, who have not been able to inhabit leadership in the way that I was just describing, where they're both anchored in themselves but also open to learning from others and open to honoring difference. There could be something within you that feels that there is no way you can hold on to your loving heart, to your openness, to your sensitivity, if you wanted to be, if you were to accept the position, the role of being a leader. That those two ways of being are not compatible. Now I'm saying something to you that I think a lot of people could have already said to you, which is that you are exactly the kind of leader we need. The worry that you have about not being able to do both, be yourself and also be a leader, that's exactly the worry we need a lot more leaders to have. It's a good worry to have. It's a good problem to have. Your fear is serious, right? If it's come up in a reading, like what's your deepest fear? It's not just some basic hesitation. It's not just, oh, let me think about it. This is something really serious. You actually really think that you're going to have to change radically if you wanted to lead people, if you wanted to occupy a role in top management or something. And part of the problem here is conflict management. That's what you're most afraid of. having to deal with conflict, having to deal with pettiness, meanness, egoic games. Maybe if this is an opportunity that you're getting in an organization, you're afraid of the environment that's already there, that's full of people backbiting and backstabbing, and we don't usually hear much about organizations who are all good and honest and everyone's holding each other up. That's kind of rare. And so if you're already familiar with the organizational setup where you're getting this opportunity, it makes a lot of sense that you're feeling afraid of taking up a different role. Because this is one thing you need to understand, that you could be thinking that this role is somewhat higher than the role that you're already playing. And one of the things you can do to help yourself is deflate that qualifier. It's not higher, it's not better, it's simply different. It's complex. It's complex in a different way. It is true that if you were to accept the role of a leader, you'd have to deal with a lot of conflict. But so far, you've met people who deal with conflict in that way of micromanaging it. They want to control the outcome. They're not open to listening. Or even if they are, it's really difficult for them to hold the position of paradox, to hold several perspectives together. Sometimes people are not, they don't have bad intentions. It's just sometimes people are not psychologically equipped, intellectually equipped because of the way that they've been raised or because of what kind of exposure they've had. And that's not their fault. Sometimes people haven't developed the capacity to be a good leader, not because they're power hungry or because they're just not interested in other people's well-being. They seriously don't have the resources within them to do this work. And some of these leaders will try really hard over the career of their leadership to develop some of those resources, and some won't. So you've likely dealt with a lot of leaders who, for some or the other reason, have tried to control people, not tried to manage them, not tried to stabilize a group towards a particular goal. Now, your guidance is to actually wrestle with this fear, not just trust it as your instinct. Because your instinct could be to say, no, I don't want this job or I don't want this responsibility. And here, your instinct is self-preservative. Your instinct is not letting you explore the kind of leader you could be, which could be very different from all the different editions of leadership that you could have encountered in your life. It is possible to be a very different kind of person in this position. Your guidance is that you are equipped to try this. It is going to be possible for you to be yourself even in this position. It's going to involve a learning curve. You're not going to figure it out in a day. And also it's possible that there are going to be some situations that leave a bad taste in your mouth. It's going to be a mixed journey, but it's not going to be impossible the way you think it's going to be now. Your body is not going to shut down. In fact, there are going to be a lot of people who love your style. There are going to be a lot of people who encourage you. You're going to find validation, you're going to find affirmation, and that sometimes on bad days, that's all we need to keep going and you are going to find that kind of support in the people that you may decide to lead. So it's going to be a mixed journey. It's not going to be all bad. It's not going to be all good for sure. But why should you do this? It's not just about other people. It's not just about goodness in the world and we need leaders like you. It's also about you. Your caregiving needs also some kind of expansion. Your ability to be creative, imaginative, tapping into the collective soul. Like, this is the next step where you're not just tapping into the collective soul for that sense of beauty, but then you're channeling it back. You're tapping into it and then you're bringing it to other people. This is the next step of your evolution. It's not just for other people, it's for you too. But take your time. It's not like this is one opportunity and it's never going to come again. If you let this one go, something else will come. So it's not about you convincing yourself or psyching yourself into thinking, okay, like, let me get over my fear. No. It's really about you exploring your fear and not just believing its voice. Whatever's come up in your midst, if you feel like this is not something I want to do right now, that's fine. But keep wrestling with your fear so that when the next opportunity comes, you're a little more aligned to it. And then when the next one comes and the next one comes, like, you are finally able to meet the opportunity that is right for you. All right, pile 3. I really hope that you find it in yourself to become all that you can be. I know it's for you too, but I also want to say, as an outsider, that I would really appreciate more leaders like you. So see you somewhere. Bye bye.